manifesting other very severe symptoms where you probably will not really be interested in sexual activity anyway. Also, cervical sexual activity, especially actual penetration with someone who has advanced cervical cancer, is not advisable because there can be life-threatening bleeding that results from that, especially if there's an actual mass in the cervix. And interestingly, I shouldn't necessarily say that you may not be interested. Some women have cervical cancer and they're not aware. They may be manifesting symptoms, but they don't recognize it as this could be cervical
because they've
cancer.
Not gone for their GY.
Exactly. So maybe they're having a heavier discharge than normal, or they're seeing just like some little bleeding here and there at other times apart from their menses. They're having some pelvic pain, but they're not associating that could be cervical cancer. I'm not saying if you have those symptoms of cervical cancer. Most of the time, if you have symptoms about severe cervical cancer, maybe you've had, surgery or whatever to treat, or maybe you're having chemotherapy, which can be used for cervical cancer. Use of the intensity of the treatment is not likely that you're being sexually active at that time.
So before I go back to the other questions, how
abnormality found on the Pap test can be nerve-wracking. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be worried or shouldn't be nervous. And any questions that you have, certainly take them to your doctor. It's better to ask and get your questions answered sufficiently to allay your fears and reassure you that everything is being done appropriately to evaluate what's going on, and to be so fearful that it stops you from going and getting the evaluation you need.
If possible, kills you.
Exactly. It's because certainly treating cervical cancer is much more difficult and much more involved, and usually leads to much more side effects and problems than getting evaluated and treated for these changes that we can see on the Pap smear or with the cervical biopsy. So again, always highlighting prevention, always encouraging communication. Even if you're scared or even if you're worried about certain things, it's better to go get your questions answered, get the appropriate testing, know for a fact that you know what's going on and that it's being managed, rather than not know and potentially develop a serious or even deadly problem in the future.
As our doctor has said, prevention, prevention.
Very important.
It's better. Ask questions, talk, instead of staying in the dark, and it would lead to more serious issues and maybe, if possible, incurable situation. This has been Ladies Digest, and have been your host, John Ikuya, and we had in our midst our regular guest who has
The Association of African Universities, AAU, is an international non-governmental organization set up by universities in Africa to promote cooperation among themselves and the international academic community.
Mon nom est professeur Étienne Ehouan-Ehilé. Je suis le secrétaire général de l'Association des universités africaines qui est basée à Accra, au Ghana. Je vais vous parler de la création de l'Association des universités africaines. Il faut remonter dans les années 60 pour pouvoir comprendre le processus. Déjà en 1960, nos dirigeants estimaient que l'éducation est l'outil majeur pour pouvoir lutter contre la pauvreté et assurer le développement.
I am Notumo Dlamini. I'm the Director of ICT Services and Knowledge Management at the Association of African Universities. The Association of African Universities is a network of 400 universities in Africa. The biggest value that the universities benefit from being members of the association is this big platform that allows them to collaborate, allows them to work together, allows them to teach together. Through this platform, a university in North Africa can work with a university in Southern Africa, and also those in East Africa can work with those in West Africa.
Founded November 1967, at a conference in Rabat, Morocco, by heads of African higher education institutions. The association is currently headquartered in Accra, Ghana.
My name is Maxwell Amo-Hoyt. I'm the Director of Finance of the Association of African Universities. The association sustains itself from contributions from member universities and also from other development partners. Some of our development partners include the World Bank, other governmental agencies like the Swedish International Development Agency, UK Department for International Development, and other partners. We also receive a lot of support from other governments, especially the government of Ghana. Other partners include the African Union, which is more or less the parent organization of the Association of African Universities. The Association of African Universities hosts the Secretariat for the African Union's Continental Education Strategy. And by so doing, we provide coordinating roles for the African Union in helping members achieve their targets.
Déjà en 1960, nos dirigeants estimaient que l'éducation est l'outil majeur pour pouvoir lutter contre la pauvreté et assurer le développement. Et rappelons-nous que les années 60, la décade 60, a été une décade où la plupart des pays africains ont obtenu leur indépendance ou ont, pris les dispositions pour être indépendants. C'était donc aussi l'année de développement, dans la mesure où tous ces pays indépendants devaient se retrouver de temps en temps pour parler de comment mettre ensemble leurs problèmes et trouver une solution commune à leurs problèmes. Et dans ce contexte-là, l'éducation était une priorité pour eux, surtout l'éducation universitaire. Et sur ce plan-là, les universités aussi se sont organisées grâce à l'UNESCO qui a parrainé plusieurs réunions depuis Madagascar jusqu'au Maroc.
My name is Jonathan Umba. I'm the Director of Research and Academic Planning. The programs and projects that we run at AAU are consistent with our strategic plan, and they are implemented for our higher education stakeholders, namely the higher education institutions in Africa. These programs are implemented in such a way that our stakeholders will get the benefit of membership of our association. And our programs also are aligned with a number of global and international agendas on higher education, including the Continental Education Strategy for Africa and the Agenda 2063. So these programs are aligned with a number of international agendas with a view to promoting higher education in Africa.
The AAU is the apex organization and principal forum for consultation, exchange of information, and cooperation among universities in Africa.
I am Professor Nkusa Mahao, Vice Chancellor of the National University of Lesotho in the Kingdom of Lesotho in Southern Africa. There are roughly 77 universities that are affiliated with the AAU in the region. But as you might be aware, there are a lot more universities that are as yet to take the membership of the Association of African Universities. Well, universities that are not members of the AAU are missing quite a lot. First of all, let's appreciate this one point, that the AAU is a main driver from the angle of training and capacitating the human resources of the continent, the agenda of the African Union 2063. So if an institution is not on board, it is missing the opportunity to leverage on the opportunities that are provided by the association.
On va se faire à une conférence qui s'est tenue à Rabat au Maroc et la création de l'Association des universités africaines a eu lieu le 12 novembre 1967.
I'm Prof. Hassan Kafi, AAU Governing Board member representing for East African region. Also, I am the president of Plasma University, Mogadishu, Somalia. We really like to give a call for universities in Africa, especially in East Africa, those which are not members still in the Association of African Universities. We are calling them because we feel the organization is ours. It represents the voice of higher education in Africa being seen all over the world.
Such as 4K Panasonic video cameras, Kino Flow lights, assorted microphones, live streaming equipment, among others, you are sure to get the best of productions. Visit us at Trinity Avenue, East Legon, adjacent the National Accreditation Board, or contact the AAU studios via the following email addresses: info@aau.org, AAUTV@aau.org, or ransford@aau.org. Alternatively, you can call us on +233 244 736280.
Let's transition smoothly from, what is it? Adeleke, what is the problem? Let's try to transition from what we were talking about, space, time, and causality into research questions. But you realize that you need that knowledge to apply to research questions. So very soon we will be seeing how we take those into account when we are stating research questions. Now, this thing looks very basic. Research questions, we write them all the time, isn't it? When we are drafting our research proposals, we are always writing research questions. And we have templates where we come from, where research questions fall, right? Let's see how easy it is to write not just research questions, but causal research questions. Yesterday, so this is basically what we will have, those objectives. Nature of causal research questions. Value of good causal research questions, and how we can do that hands-on experience on our concept notes. Yesterday we did AIDLIN, okay? Yeah. And it is here, method of problems versus method of topics. And the question is, what comes first? Is it the topic? Is it the problem? How have we been doing it? And how effective is the way we have been doing it? What does AIDLIN say? Very quickly, just a few, snippets from what you read. Susan?
Well, from what I read yesterday, I think the common trend is for the topic to come first before the problem.
The common trend. Is that with our students? Or with even us? Eh? Our students or even us researchers? So the teachers who are here, you're teaching students bad manners. So the common trend, not always, the assumption is that some of us are doing right, some of us are doing it wrong. All right?
Depends on the research at that point.
Now we begin to justify. It also depends.
Not really, but that's the truth.
Moses, sometimes it depends. What else did we learn? Abuka? From Idli.
Yeah, I think as she says, we need to repent. But I think topicism is really sort of a shortcut. So we abstract from investigating problems, thinking that if you focus on a topic, it's the shortcut to resolving the issues maybe you are given
Yeah.
or something.
What does Aileen call it? Calls it a malady. What is a malady? It's a disease. Okay? And it just means that you're focusing on an area to cover. There's an area that you want to cover. You don't know what the problem is, but you want to cover it. And he says that, you know, when students are in the library and they are talking to him, they are saying that I have been reading about my what? My topic. But he asked them, what is the puzzle? What is the problem? What else did we gather from Aidley? This table. Nkechi.
Okay.
You can sit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, that reading really corrected me a lot because I'm always interested in what is the topic. Even yesterday that we are working, I was like, if you bring up your own
Topic.
I'm interested. Let me see the topic. Then from the topic, I will try to. But I now found out that it's not necessarily for you to focus on the topic. Just focus on the problem.
Did you realize yesterday all the presentations that we did here, the first thing we were stating is what? So I'm happy that Aileen is giving you an opportunity to start seeing things from a different perspective. Anyone who says that a topic comes first, if any of you, quite a number of you have published research articles, right? How many times have you changed the topic to that article? How many times have you changed the topic? What does that tell you? A topic does not drive a study. That is what it tells you. If you have a problem, that problem will determine how you move in that study. But a topic will not drive that study.
That's why everyone said that research must be problem-driven.
Problem-driven. So are we going with a topic or we are going with a problem? Going with the problem. We are all in agreement. So we can now leave and go for.
Article, he actually says it is much more complicated. You have to really think, and he quotes Einstein saying that if we knew what the problem was, we didn't need any research. So it is the topic, yes, but you have to work the problem, but you have to work very hard to find it.
So that means even getting the problem itself is a problem.
Exactly.
So how do we get this problem? How do we get to define this problem? Now, Charles, I've seen your hand. We might not, in this session, keenly focus on the finding of the problem. But we are more concerned about that question that we ask that defines the problem. Because if you ask one key question about your research or about that puzzle that you have and you ask it well, it frames your problem. That is why you see proposals submitted, and all the time what we hear is, what is the problem? What is the study problem? You go to whatever committee, they're asking, what is the problem? Or they are saying it lacks clarity. So what are they telling you to do? They are asking you to sharpen your problem so that anyone reading that paragraph, that small paragraph, is able to know what direction you're taking. So how do we sharpen that research problem? You can capture your research, the whole of your research problem, in one question. And that is what we want to look at today. So let's see, Charles, I saw your hand.
Well, I think it is being tackled somewhere. I was just saying, sometimes if you move from academic to some maybe policy, you might find the problem is defined for you on the topic.
Say that again.
You can be asked to, suppose in my context,
Mm-hmm.
the issue is to investigate the determinants of inflation over a given period of time.
Mm-hmm.
That way,
Mm-hmm.
I've been given the problem. Even the title is actually suggested.
That is very true. In policy practice, sometimes the policy actors know what they want researchers to do. And they will tell them, this is where we are facing a problem. Can you go do research on this particular thing and bring a solution to us? So that way, you already know what it is that you want to step out there into the field and do. So in certain areas, and especially in policy, and we will come to know this when we start doing the module on critical policy engaged research. How we as researchers get in sync with policy makers or policy actors so that we know the problems that they need solutions to, which is very different from academic practice. Because as we will see, there are ways in which we identify problems. There are ways in which we identify questions. So this more reading, it is actually 4 pages divided into, that's why I was saying 8 pages, but it is actually 4 pages. Very precise. Did you read it?
Yes.
Okay. Very precise reading, but it really helps us clarify what we've been doing, whether we've been doing it right, or whether we need to start thinking about it from a different perspective. So what is a research question? Solar. Doing solar. What is the short form of your name?
Doing.
Okay.
Research questions are questions that would aid you in your research objectives and in your research work. So you help in identifying what
That which leads you into your research work. Good trial? Timothy. It is not in your Chago. Nyambura.
Actually, research questions are those questions that guide your investigation, that lead you.
What is Moses? Then they use the term Moses to define Moses.
Research questions
Is
can be a tool or can be a direction for arriving at a particular outcome in your research.
Irene, what is a question? Let me drop research. What is a question?
A question, I think, is that statement that shows curiosity.
Thank you.
Where discovery is the intention, so that you get some answers.
Something that helps you seek for answers.
Like an inquiry.
Okay.
To finding the path to the ultimate direction.
Is the question the inquiry or the research is the inquiry?
The research is inquiry, but the...
What is the question?
Oh.
Yes, my dear. What is that? Is a research question?
What I want to say is that a research questions, there are those inquiries that a researcher, makes, to get answers to which, solves an identified problem.
Simple statement of a research puzzle or a research problem. And so we are saying that if you state your question very well, somebody reading that question will be able to know what the problem that you're seeking for a solution is. Because when you ask a research question, it means that you want to investigate so that you provide answers to that particular research question. So in short, the statement of a research problem or puzzle. Now, there are a few things that we need to put into account when you're stating research questions. You cannot research on something that you do not have competence in or interest in that which you want to research on. Some research questions might not be researchable. Anyone with an example of a research question that is not researchable?
Something like,
yes.
What would have happened if Obama was not the president?
You think it is not researchable?
It is after, if it is
That is a what if. Actually, it's a counterfactual. Just like asking, what would have happened if Africa was not colonized? And I think there is a book like that. What if Africa was not colonized? It's difficult. But you can do it. You can look at it from what the methodologies that we have been talking about. Look back at when Obama was not the president. What was it like? You can do it. Anything that you can think about that is not researchable.
I think there isn't.
Huh? Say?
I think there isn't.
There isn't. Are you sure?
We just can't think of it.
Have you ever presented something or sat in a panel where somebody said this thing is not researchable? And for what reason are they saying it is not researchable? Huh?
It's too broad.
Too broad.
Lacks direction.
Lacks direction.
It's something like the history of Africa. It is
History of Africa.
That is, yesterday we said we need to respect each other's opinion. So that is what she feels. That is what she feels, and she thinks that it's too broad and you require a lot of time to research about the history of Africa.
So you want to research the history of Africa, just take sample now. It's done. If you take the sample, it's not that you take
if I bring a proposal to you and say this on the history of Africa, and you're on the panel, you will clap for me.
It depends on the context. What that
So you see, you are already narrowing it down. So what you're saying is that there is a problem in the way that particular issue is stated. And there is a way you can sharpen it in a way that it is researchable.
Yes.
So the original idea that she gave, it means that it lacks something. So it might not be researched the way it is. We review protocols that are saying that, somebody is doing this study in Kenya. Right? They are looking at women empowerment on M-Pesa. M-Pesa is this money transfer in Kenya. How broad is M-Pesa use in Kenya? How can you study that? So those are the things that we are saying lack clarity, and for that reason, they become very difficult even for the reader. Most of the time, we write to ourselves. And that is where the problem is. Focus on your audience. What do you want your audience to learn? And that is why every time you write something, you have to subject it to what? To peer review. Because then they get to give you opinions on what they think. Right? Then relevance, importance. How important is what you're writing on? And especially now that we are talking about policy. Look at your topics. Do they make any sense in the policy circles? Are they of any policy relevance? And Remy will tell you that some certain policies are not urgent. So in as much as you write, they might not find place on the table of policy making because it is not a concern for the policy actors at that particular time. So you need to be current to know what is needed, right? If you really want to write for policy, and yesterday we talked about novelty. Where is the newness? Where is the contribution to knowledge? Is there any form of originality in your work, or you're just changing the locality of the study? And finally, are you able to collect data? Are there topics where you cannot access data? Plenty. Can I walk into the Niger Delta region and collect data? Susan?
It's possible.
It's possible. How easy? How easy is it?
It depends on the data.
I want to collect data about the gangs that run. Yes. If they are gangs, that's what I want to collect data on. How easy is it for me? For you to collect data, you have to access. It has to be secure as well for you.
If your question is on the gangs, other people who are not part of the gangs can tell you about this.
Now that speaks to the issue of ethics, which we will come to. How credible is your information if you're getting it from others?
But
what are you doing to the research? So those are other questions that you need to ask about your research. How ethical are your methods of data collection? Yes, ma'am.
What if, like we're told for such data, you can be an observer, but you can make yourself part of the gang.
Again, disguising yourself so that you collect information. Issue of ethics as well.
But you can be a participant observer.
That is true depending on what you're doing. If you're doing ethnography and you seek consent of the community that you are observing, you can be a participant observer. Pretend to be a gang. Go and join Mungiki. Go and join Mungiki.
Even though it's ethically wrong, but it depends.
Okay, Perpetua. You see, these are the people that I was talking about on Moodle, who are saying that it all depends on the situation. So if you really, really want the data, and there is no any other way out, you can disguise.
And especially if it is important for security-related kind of government policy.
Security issues.
Yes, because the government needs information before they can actually develop a strategy.
What are you doing to the researched? Don't they have rights? If you were the researched, and you found out that somebody is disguising to understand your marital affairs so that then we can see how to, solve issues to do with marriage breakups and all that, how would you feel?
That would not.
You see? Anyway, those are ethical issues and we have a whole day of ethics. But let's know that there are certain things that are not feasible, even in terms of methodology. He was saying yesterday, Dio, he was saying that they are doing a research on intervention. How much money do you require? What is your budget?
Quite huge.
You see? You see? So sometimes you as a student might not afford money or a budget to do the kind of research that you want to do. And just because it touches on a methodological issue, then it is not possible for you as a master's student. And you're not able to secure funding. So there are all types of things that you need to, take into account when you're stating your research question. If your research question requires that you apply a randomized control trial, you need to know the nature of that methodology, what it requires, and whether you are able to do that. Because introducing an intervention requires that you use money. Maybe, sometimes, maybe not. The intervention might not require a lot of money, but you need to take all those things into account, right? So, some of the good qualities of a research question is that you need precision. When I read your research question, I must tell as a reader from that research question what exactly it is that this person wants to do. And for that reason, you need to reduce the variables to the essential minimum. Yesterday, we saw an example here of a question that had so many factors. So the question is, as a reader, am I able to understand what you really want to do from that research question? But if I see that you have just captured the causal and the outcome factors and how they relate within a research question, then I quite understand. We are giving an analogy of the elephant and the felling of trees. It is not the back, it is not, the body, but the trunk. So why can't we reduce our question to the trunk and say that it is the trunk that we want to investigate how it fells trees? Why can't you be precise to say that you want to understand the socioeconomic factors that influence malnutrition? Then all the other issues that you want to study under these socioeconomic factors, we can see them later on in the study as you unpack it. So look at your research questions, the way you have stated them, and see whether you have reduced them in a way that it just captures the independent and the dependent, the causal and the outcome. But sometimes you might not know the cause, but you have seen an outcome and you want to explain that outcome. Can you state that question as simply as that? Sometimes you suspect a cause leading to a certain outcome. Can you capture the question in a way that it has reduced to the essential, so that there is some form of what? Clarity. So look at your, and from now on you will not hear us saying look at your topics. Look at your questions that tell us the problem and how you're stating them, and see whether somebody reading, in fact the best thing to do is to write that question and pass it to your neighbor. Ask them, what do you think this question means? Is it clear to you as a reader? Because sometimes when we are writing, we never see our faults, but somebody else can easily see the problem or the right thing in your question. Okay? Now, an example, that was hypothetical. This is a colleague, you will be seeing him tomorrow. Daniel Doe is our colleague. Yesterday I was saying that we did this study on devolution, and it was in different countries, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, a number of countries. So this is the question that he had at the very beginning. He asked, given a fair level of intergovernmental transfers in Ghana, why do some districts improve service delivery and others do not? So in his reading and background understanding, he had seen that there is some fair level of transfer of funds. And he wasn't so sure why some districts are doing better than others, given the fairness. Is that clear, the explanation that I have given. But there is a lot of ambiguity in the question. So how did he reduce this? Sorry. Look at that. A few of you are nodding their heads. I'm waiting to see all the heads nodding, then I can move on. Is there clarity in the second question? It is more clear. So when you're beginning to do literature review, background understanding, you're not quite clear on what it is that you want. But as you continue to sharpen your idea from background information, then you are able to land on what it is that you should be researching on. And we will see how you go about that. So the body of knowledge, literature, is very important in sharpening the research question. Why is this so? Why is the body of knowledge or literature important?
Because that's what helps you to situate your research into relevance and into acceptance. Right?
Moses thinks that it is what helps you situate your research. So theoretical sort of scoping and where you lie as a researcher, yes?
It also helps you to spot, pick the gaps.
It also helps you to spot or pick the gaps.
That are in the literature.
Then you can problematize the gaps, because there is a difference between, we saw this in the reading, right? There is a problem between gap spotting and problematization. All right? How else is literature important? Yes, Irene.
I think even when you talk about a research that is novel, it is not entirely
new.
Yes, it is usually based on some previous information. So you want to be able to see how your research is linked to what has gone before you.
Good. And if you state your question well, anchored by the body of knowledge, because you're saying, let me see what people, even before you come here, you in your mind, in your experiences, you might have an idea or a problem that you do not have responses to, answers to. And it might begin from there. If I ask those of you who have gotten their PhDs here, where your PhD started, it might have just been observation. An observation that you made, and then you started asking questions in your mind. And then you said, let me see what literature says about what I am thinking about. And in the process, you are asking whether this idea that you have is researchable. Because if there is enough knowledge on the same, then what are you doing? There is no point, right? So from an idea to the body of knowledge that anchors what you have, and asking yourself, what gaps are there that I want to fill? What has been done? And what do I want to do, right? So this is why the literature and the existing narratives then become very important in anchoring the whole process of research. Because if you ask the right question, then this question will inform the what? The choice of methods. And if you use the right methods to collect data to respond to this question, then that will determine the nature of evidence that you have. And the analysis that you make and the theories that you either prove, disapprove, or the new theories that you come up with. So this remains very, very, very key. Yesterday in the chain, this was not there. Remember that chain? Yes. This wasn't there. But we say that you have to be informed from the background perspective. This is Aidlin, and these are drivers of research questions. Sorry about this, drivers of research questions. And he says that it begins from a vague feeling that something is amiss. Then you have your own background knowledge. It could even be knowledge from your culture. It could be knowledge from your institution. But then you are not so sure that somebody else has thought about it the way you've done. So that's why you go into literature to look for what? Logical inconsistencies. And these ones then will help you state that question that seeks for what? An explanation. But these are very important because the logical inconsistencies are defined by the gaps that then you spot will be the same. But also, sometimes we want to see within the body of knowledge, are there competing explanations or hypotheses to what we are proposing to do? So, I look at Ngozi's work. I want to do a research on, the problem of drug abuse and what it does to academic performance. And I look at Ngozi's work and I ask myself, what hypothesis did she have in her work? And what hypothesis can I have? And I can look at that from different perspectives. I'm asking, did she do territorial studies? What Remy was talking about this morning. Was there some kind of spatial variations? Did she do comparison in terms of one institution and another? One or two people seem to be speaking to their ancestors. If you are tempted, please stand and teach with me. That will be fine. If you're tempted to speak to your ancestors, very soon we are going for coffee at 11. So let's just finish this. And also you need to look at what? The issue of time. This is what Remy was talking about this morning. How does the existing studies take into account what happened in the past, what is happening, and what is likely to happen? And how do I use that to state my research question, right? And sometimes you see a research question or a topic that takes time into account. And they will justify why they are looking at this time period to this time period, especially for longitudinal studies, right? So that tells you that they are taking into account competing hypotheses and especially focusing on the issue of period or time. Aidlin also talks about subjects. And he says that sometimes we analyze literature in the wrong way. Why? Because we are reading literature from somebody in psychology when we are in sociology. And we know they make different assumptions depending on their disciplines. And the gaps that we spot are wrong in the sense that we want them to fit into our own disciplines and fit into our own assumptions. Instead of saying this is reported like this within this domain, but we want to look at it from our domain, all right? So we should be careful when we are gap spotting because we might run into the problem of, saying that this is a gap when it is really not a gap, right? So I want to emphasize the importance of this thing called theory and literature review as an important aspect in stating your research question. Be sure by the time you come up with a research question or a problem that you have gone through the existing narratives and seen what they say. Be informed by the theories and assumptions behind the literature that you are reviewing so that you state the right question that is seeking for the right answers. Now, we saw this guy, right? Yep. These people, we saw them, and they are saying that identifying gaps is very easy. Spotting gaps. I mean, you read and you say, this so and so says this, they leave this, they don't say this, their focus is not on this. This was their objective. They did not focus. You are spotting gaps, right? So it is very easy. But it moves beyond what? And towards problem. problematization. Now, I'll give you a very interesting example here of a student in sociology of religion. And his question is, how has Christianity influenced death rituals among these people here? Maragoli is a community in Western Kenya. The question is not complete because the scope is not there, okay? I just put it in short, but he's looking at the Maragoli of Western Kenya.
camera bɛ mɛ ba yɛ dusu ba yi o obi so wɔn ko dum kɔtɔ ade ketewa mba kɔtɔ kɛseɛ na n'o tete na wɔnya kakra ko.
I'm here with the Association of African Universities Television, AUTV. I just want to say that without the media, you won't know what's going on in the world. Even with the media, you sometimes don't know what's going on in the world. So you need to tune in to the reliable sources who are really on the front lines, who can give you the information you need and give you facts, not conjecture, give you real news, not fake news. And this is the place to find it, AAU TV.
The voice of higher education in Africa.
Welcome to AAU TV's Impact Stories. My name is Ransford Bekwin and I'm going to be the host for this edition. This season we are celebrating academic mentors. In simple terms, the AAU TV cameras are scouting Africa to look for the academic icons, to interview them and to know more about their life stories. Please follow us on all social media outlets. Google Association of African Universities on Facebook and on YouTube. You can also follow us on Twitter at AAU_67. Today we have a great personality to kickstart our maiden edition of Impact Stories. But before I introduce him, let's go for a very short commercial break.
Accra Institute of Technology is a top-ranked private technology university in Ghana. The university offers world-class bachelor's, master's, and PhD degree programs.
We are AIT, the University of the Future.
Hello and welcome back to Impact Stories on AAU Television. AAU, the voice of higher education in Africa. As I mentioned before the break, we are celebrating an academic icon who is not only a household name, but has made it big on the international higher education front. He was born on 24th of March, 1939. And by our calculation, he's nearing his 80th birthday. He has been a fellow of the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences. And indeed, he was the immediate past president. Besides his impressive academic laurels, he has at least 4 honorary awards, doctorate awards, to his credit. In 2007, he was awarded the Companion of the Order of the Volta by the Republic of Ghana. Our guest also served as a member of the Council of State of the Republic of Ghana from 2009 to 2013. Distinguished viewers, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Professor Akilapa Sawyer. Professor, welcome to AAU Impact Stories.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me start by congratulating the AAU on the setting up of AAU television, which I think is a fantastic idea.
Thank you.
And I'm proud to be part of the process of taking it forward.
Thank you very much, Prof. That's very relieving of of you to say this to us. You have been a former Secretary General of the AAU, and it's always good to hear from you. And I recall the last time I actually saw you in public. It was about 2 weeks ago, and the applause that you received from the audience was outstanding. Prof, you remember when we were at IDEN?
Yes, I remember that. I remember that.
When the list of dignitaries were mentioned, there was some unusual quietness. But when the name Professor Akilakpa Sawyer was mentioned, there was such a huge applause. So we want to know, Prof, the name Akilakpa Sawyer. Sometimes we confuse where even the pronunciation.
Right. And the spelling.
And the spelling.
Yeah.
Some say Akilakpa, and then the Sawyer comes with a double R.
That's right.
So can you please take us through the Sawyer family tree?
Very, very briefly, my grandfather on the father's side was actually from Sierra Leone. But he grew up in the time when there was a British colony in West Africa. And the Sierra Leonean educated people were used by the British all along the coast, through what is now Ghana, through Nigeria, back and forth. So he was a merchant, and he traveled across the whole the West Coast. So part of my roots go back to Abeokuta in Nigeria, but also Sierra Leone.
Really?
Yes.
You are a Pan-African then?
Very much so. More than that, I'm a global Pan-African.
What is that, Prof?
Because the Sawyer is from the slave origins. Apparently, my forebears were part of the released slaves from Canada who came back to settle in Freetown, Sierra Leone, and came with the Sawyer name from there. And the Akilakpa name, I think, is Yoruba. So my West Africanness and my diaspora connections are clear from the name.
Viewers, we are actually celebrating an international icon. Thank you very much. So, did you ever school in Sierra Leone or Nigeria?
No, I didn't.
You were born in Ghana?
Yeah, I was born in Ghana. I lived in Ghana. I've been to Nigeria and Sierra Leone. But I never spent time there. My family is there in Sierra Leone. The family there.
Wow. So you relate with them very well?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm very West African in that sense.
You are West African. Yes. I once chanced upon one name, Akilakpa Sawyer, again in Ghana. I don't know whether you are related.
I'm related. Any Akilakpa Sawyer is a relation.
All right. Yes. So, Prof, can you tell us a little bit about your schooling days, your pre-university schooling days in Ghana?
Yes. Well, I went to government school in what is now around the Kingsway area, you know, the Kingsway the old days.
Yes.
Government school, I think it's still there, Kimbu.
Kimbu, yes.
Kimbu. And I went to, from there, I went to what is now senior high school, which was then, I suppose, middle school.
Yes.
Then to
still at Kimbu?
No. That was Kimbu.
At Kimbu?
Yes.
I
don't know what it is now. It was Kimbu then.
Yes.
Then off to Achimota in 1952.
Wow.
And of course, I spent 7 years there, did my A-levels before going abroad to professional work.
So you spent 7 years at Achimota School?
Yes, 52 to 59. I did my O-levels in 56 and actually 58, I beg your pardon. And then my A-levels in 58. Yeah, so that's a normal span, 7 years.
So can you tell us a little bit about your school days at Achimota School?
Very interesting period. Looking back now, what stands out was the quality of the education, not just teaching, because we were very privileged to have had teachers who were at least half or more from the UK, the UK public school system, what they call public school in those days, who brought to the then Gold Coast the idea of a very rounded education. So while we were covering in the curriculum things like Greek literature and history, we were also involved in farming, in woodwork, in and so on. In other words, it was a very rounded education, but also in sports, very, very much.
Oh, that made you a complete person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and in those days, everybody had to play almost all sports, even the ones who were not very good.
Really?
You had to swim, you had to play volleyball, you had to play soccer, you had to play everything. Of course, the best one on the team. But everybody did some sports.
Prof, I'll come to your sporting dreams. Wow. So, who were some of your mates?
Well,
if you can remember him.
Yes, indeed. I can pick out one right away. Ayekuyama.
Okay.
He was my form mate right through from Form 1 to Form 7, a very close friend.
Wow.
There was a Jackson, I don't know if you know, also a Jackson who was the Bank of Ghana.
No.
Quite a few names like that, you know.
Okay.
We were mates of mine at the time.
But did you pick any leadership position?
I was such a naughty boy.
Oh my goodness.
In fact,
no, we don't believe that.
I'm telling you, I remember my housemaster was so fed up with me.
Oh.
That he told me I would end up in prison.
Oh my goodness. He did.
Well, so far I haven't been in prison yet, but there's still time. But Mr. Allen was very clear that given how naughty I was, I would end up on the wrong side of the law.
So you still remember his name?
Very much.
I hope you have forgiven him.
Well, I laughed at him.
You did?
Even then, you know. No, I was very naughty. So I was appointed to a position only in my final year as a dormitory monitor.
Dormitory monitor.
Yeah, which was, I suppose, a reluctant give by the authorities, you know, all right, have something, you too, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was very much a rebel.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You don't look like one. Well, okay, Prof. Yeah. So in your school days, what were your career ambitions?
Right.
And what really motivated you to aspire for such careers?
I suppose to the degree that there was any proper ambition, it was to be a lawyer like my father was.
Oh, okay.
It was a vague idea. The whole family thought I'll be the lawyer of the family and so on. So I had vague ideas about doing law at some point. But of course, it was very much a child's dream at the time. You know. But that was my main drive.
Okay. But were there other careers during the pre-independent and immediate post-independent era?
I suppose, looking back now, the main prospects would have been in the public service or the professions, in particular law and medicine.
Okay.
Things like engineering came along later. They were not quite...
Really?
Not at the time.
So where were we getting the engineers?
From outside, mostly.
Okay.
There were a few local engineers. There were some. But the ambition of young people was not to be an engineer, but to be a public servant. Or even in the commercial sector.
Okay.
And so on. But also in professions.
Okay.
Mine was to be a lawyer because my family had this record of legal work. Yes.
Okay. Wow, that's very good to know. Okay. Then when you left Achimota, why did you not continue your education in Ghana, but you went to King's College, University of Durham?
Right. A very interesting story there, and it shows the ways in which people's lives can change like that. I had, at the end of my secondary school career, applied to go to the University of Ghana to do history and been accepted.
Hold on. You wanted to read law.
Right.
But then you applied to do history.
Right.
I don't see the connection.
Precisely. Because at the time there was no law faculty at the time in Ghana.
Okay.
The law faculty began the year after I left.
Wow.
So there was no law faculty here. So I kept on the normal academic work, go to do history. Why did I go and do law instead of history? Interesting. My mother, who of course was a widow at the time, was talking to one of the tenants of our property, who asked, how's your son doing? What is he up to? And she said, well, he's just done his A-levels, done very well. He wants to go and do law, but with no money. So he has to go to Lagos. And this tenant, a foreigner at the time, said, well, we owe you rent, so we are prepared to advance the money for his education abroad and take it from the rent.
That's a generous offer.
Amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. So, and this was late in the year. You apply for university place in the UK at least a year in advance.
Okay.
I was applying almost at the end of that period. So my choice of university was very limited.
Very, very.
My sister was in the UK at the time and luckily got Durham. King's College, Durham for me.
Wow.
But it turns out, interestingly, that my father's law degree was also from Durham.
Wow.
Because he took his law degree in Forabe College in Sierra Leone. And in those days, Forabe awarded Durham degrees. So my father was LLB Durham, and guess what? So was I.
Wow, the tradition goes on.
Totally accidentally, but straight up the line.
Yes. So I believe your son too went to Durham.
No, he didn't. he was wiser. He went somewhere else.
Oh, okay. No. Okay. Then let me ask, did you actually have a mentor during your pre-university days before you went to Durham?
No.
No?
No. No. But my mother was a pillar of strength.
Okay.
Quiet, determined to make sure everything worked. So that was my main support, my mother.
Rob, after your first degree in 1962, you had your Barrister of Law degree, or?
No.
Barrister at Law.
That's right. That was the English bar.
That's the English bar?
Yes.
But you could practice in Ghana and in London?
No. The English bar qualification entitled me to practice in the UK, in England actually, only. But at the time, if you had got an English bar qualification, you could apply to the Ghana Bar Association to be registered to practice law in Ghana. So I had to come to Ghana and get registered for the bar in Ghana as well. So there were two separate activities.
Okay.
Yes.
So did you ever practice in Ghana, in a chamber?
No. I was never a practitioner in the sense of making a living from practice. I was a law lecturer, but of course the courts at that time used to invite people like me pro bono to represent unrepresented clients. Usually convicts will be convicted but had no lawyers who were called in to defend. So I did quite a bit of that. And in the end of my career, in the last 5 years, I was heading a law firm which belonged to my cousin who died, and I took over. So that was my nearest to practice. And of course, I was also attending court occasionally in Papua New Guinea in Tanzania, but never a full-time position.
Okay. You did your bachelor's and master's in Durham. Then you went to do another master's.
Yes.
Why two masters? For a young, and well-established person like you.
Interesting. I did my first degree in Durham and my second degree, the master's, in London.
Okay.
Yes. Now, that was done because while I was doing the bar in London, the bar, I had to, first of all, what they call eat dinners for 3 years. I used to come by train from Durham to London to spend a weekend in Lincoln's Inn with the judges and so on, eating dinner and so on, as qualifying criteria for getting the bar. At the end of that period, you then have to do exams. So I had to come to London for that, for a year. And in that year, I began the master's because I was in London anyway. And I got the degree of Master of Law, but also the barrister as well. Now, then I took a job in Tanzania. And there was a program which, I forget the name now, offered a 1-year grant to lecturers to spend a year abroad in the US. Yes. I've now been to the US, so I said, wow, why don't I take the chance of this offer? But that scholarship arrangement required that you do a degree while you are
in the US.
In the US. So I wrote to my, literally I looked at the most important academic in the area I was specializing in. From his books. I wrote direct to him. Can I come and study with you? And he said, yes, come. In Berkeley. He was the most famous scholar at the time in his field. It was called Albert Ehrenschweig.
Okay.
So I spent a year at Berkeley on this grant, but I had to do a degree. So I killed time literally in doing the master's degree during that period. It wasn't something I needed.
So at the age of 28, you have 2 masters.
That's right.
Congratulations. It's no mean achievement.
Now it's quite common, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yes, but not at the age of 28.
No, that's true.
So you are still a trailblazer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Prof. Now we're coming back to you said that you were quite stubborn at school.
Yes.
Were you a student activist?
Very much. Very much. And unfortunately, at the secondary school level, we weren't organized.
Okay.
So once activism showed in almost individual rebellions against authority.
Okay.
At the time, authority was not the headmaster or even the teacher. It was often your hall authorities, your colleague students.
Decentralization started from there.
Quite literally.
Okay.
So that the monitor was the boss of the dormitory. And of course, they were often quite authoritarian.
The monitors.
The monitors.
And you became a monitor
after.
Later.
That was a joke of it, you know. But they controlled us, and they were very authoritarian. I was a complete rebel against them. And they reported to the housemaster. So when the housemaster said I would go to prison, it was based on reports he'd received
from the monitors. Wow.
He didn't know me himself. But essentially, that was the nature of my rebellion. I mean, let me give you an example of that.
Okay.
At one point, the school decided that they had a school belt, and everyone should wear the school belt. I didn't like the belt.
The color of it?
I know the color of it was one of these elastic things, so I didn't wear it. You couldn't wear another belt, so I had no belt. So I wore my shorts down here like they do these days in protest. Like my pants were always falling off. I refused to wear the belt, you know, for years. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about, protesting against authoritarian dictation from authority.
That's interesting. And then politically too, I know you are an Nkrumahist.
Yes. Well, that came much later.
Okay.
It's an interesting evolution.
Okay.
At the time I was in Ghana, and we are talking now about the immediate post-independence period.
Okay. I thought your rebellious nature was the way it was derived from how Nkrumah rebelled against the UGCC.
No.
Okay.
At the time, it was completely apolitical.
Okay.
I was very much in favor of the independence movement and so on. But it wasn't really something I took personally directly at the time.
Okay.
It was much later that I became much more politically active at that level. Much later.
Okay. So what is the philosophy of Nkrumahism?
Well, you know, to tell the truth, I have never been an ideologue of Nkrumahism as such.
Okay.
My concern with the Nkrumah phenomenon is what Nkrumah represented.
Okay.
Not himself personally or his ideas personally, but what he represented. Long story short, he was concerned for the true liberation of our people. Not just independence, but the assumption of control over our affairs across the continent and the black world. It wasn't just a wish, but he thought about it.
He did.
He learned about it. And actually practiced it.
Wow.
So he was one of the very few people who, from our history, combined the correct objectives with deep thinking about the objective and consistent pursuit of the practice. And that's what I think is worth looking at.
Okay.
But of course, at the same time, some of the policies he introduced, had we kept on with them and improved them, where we are now.
Hi, viewers, it's becoming very interesting. We shall go for a short break, and when we come back, we shall look at Professor Sawyer in his days after school.
Are you an institution or individual? Do you intend to organize a memorable event to be archived for future reference? Then look no further than AAU Studios, because it's your best bet. With our spacious studio and state-of-the-art media equipment such as 4K Panasonic video cameras, KinoFlow lights, assorted microphones, live streaming machines and others, you are sure to get the best of production. Visit us at Trinity Avenue, East Legon, adjacent the National Accreditation Board, or contact the AAU studio via the following addresses: info@aau.org, AAUTV@aau.org, Ransford@aau.org. Alternatively, you can call us on 0244 185 998 or +233 24 473 6280.
Okay, viewers, welcome back. We are interviewing Professor Akilakpa Sawyer, who is featuring on AAU Impact Stories. Prof, before the break, we were talking about your life before school and then during your certification days. Now we are going to talk about your work.
Okay.
It looked like your first major work environment was at University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about that? And why not back in Ghana?
Interesting background to that. During the period of my scholarship for the master's degree, remember I was saying that my first degree was family funded.
Yes.
But I got a government scholarship for the second degree in London. And so the normal deal was that at the end of that, I come back to the University of Ghana.
Okay.
So I applied to come back to the University of Ghana and waited and waited and waited and waited.
Prof, why? Was there bureaucracy or?
I just waited. No response to my application. Towards the end of my degree period, my supervisor said, well, look, there's this offer from Dar es Salaam.
Okay.
Why don't you just write to them and see what comes out? So I wrote to them, the law school, which was then in its first year.
Okay.
And got back a reply quickly, got back an appointment very quickly. I accepted it. I was ready to go to Dar es Salaam. Then comes a Legon offer. Too late.
Too late.
Too late. So I went off to Dar es Salaam to begin my career.
So were you a pioneering lecturer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In a sense, my group of lecturers were the ones who had the first sort of graduates.
Okay.
The university began 2 years before my getting there.
Okay.
So they graduated in that year.
All right.
So we were the first lot, yes.
And then when you were there, you were an editor or an associate editor of the East African Law Journal and the East African Law Review.
Yes.
Were they two separate journals?
They were.
Okay.
They were. It's a very interesting situation because here was a brand new law faculty.
Okay.
And it was a faculty for the whole of East Africa, not just Tanzania.
Oh, right.
And here were these very young lecturers. All of us were young.
Okay.
Beginning a law school tradition in this area. So within 4 or 5 years, we had to do a number of things, including establishing an academic tradition.
Okay.
And we felt that it was all well and good to publish in foreign journals.
Okay.
Why don't we have our own? So we began to develop the
East
two
African journals.
Exactly. And that was what I mean, believe it or not, in my third year of academic work, I was the associate editor of the journal. That shows you what I'm talking about.
Exactly. May I ask, was there press freedom in Eastern Africa by then?
Yes.
There was?
Yes. Huge press freedom at the time. In fact, Tanzania was exceptional.
All right.
Because President Nyerere, as you recall, was himself a scholar.
All right.
And so he gave the university free rein.
All right.
And it's a very interesting period because the government and the party were looking for ways of strengthening the socialist base of the country. And they were open to anybody with ideas to help.
Okay.
Foreigners, local people, whoever. So all of us were involved very much, not just in academic work, but also in public political work at the time. And many of us learned the rhythms of political economy. As part of that process.
You are.
In other words, my political thinking almost began, certainly matured during my 6 years in Dar es Salaam.
In Dar es Salaam.
It wasn't just me, all the young ones who came from wherever.
Okay.
They were Peace Corps volunteers, they were QSO from Canada, they were from all over. It was a center for not just Tanzanians or West Africans.
Okay.
We are students from Malawi, students from Ethiopia, from Mozambique. An amazing African culture.
Okay.
That was my luck. That I began my career as a young person in that situation.
Wow. And then you couldn't stay. You came back to Ghana.
Right.
In 1970?
1970, yes.
I thought you were going to spend your life in Tanzania.
Well, I had a wonderful time and I enjoyed it very much, but home was home.
So what brought you home?
Home because I had always felt that I had left my family in 59.
Okay.
And although I came back occasionally, I still missed my family very much.
Okay.
So at the end of 6 years, I thought I should come back home.
Okay.
So I did.
You did.
Back to my old
school,
faculty.
the faculty of law. And then you stayed there for 9 years.
Yes.
Up to 79.
That's right. Yes.
And then you ran away to one of the most rural countries ever.
Absolutely.
That we ever know of.
Absolutely incredible
place. That is
place.
Papua New Guinea.
Absolutely. Yes.
All the way across the ocean.
Yes, right.
Indian Ocean.
Yes.
Prof, why Papua New Guinea of all places?
Again, it's a very interesting story. Back to the issue of how history moves in different ways. I was at the University of Ghana during the 1970s.
Yes.
Their champion years. Incredible political activity, incredible everything.
Okay.
As you know, academics are entitled to a sabbatical.
Yes.
After 7 years of teaching. So I was due for a sabbatical. But we were so involved in the political campaign for the period that I chose not to move and stayed on. By 1978, things were settling down. Remember what happened in 79 and so on.
Yes.
I had applied for different jobs elsewhere. I had appointments in Kenya and Zambia.
Okay.
Then the old dean who had worked with me in Dar es Salaam wrote to me from Papua New Guinea, where he'd been acting as dean for some time.
Okay.
He invited me over. I had actually agreed to go to Zambia.
Okay.
Then comes this letter from Papua New Guinea.
Yes.
Off I went.
Would you have gone if you had known the place before?
Oh, yes.
You would have gone?
Yes. Yes.
That was challenging.
Absolutely, and it was an amazing experience.
Wow.
Because it was quite unlike anything else I'd been come across. Absolutely.
Very culturally diverse.
Very much so. And at the time, Papua New Guinea was emerging from, how do we call it? Put it this way, it was an amazing society because it had within it people who were living a Stone Age existence, literally. At the same time, people who were also living in the space age.
Wow. Two extreme worlds.
Absolutely incredible contrast.
Wow.
I think it is still that way now, but at the time it was really incredibly diverse. So the students we had, some of them came from that background. It was part of the work of the university to move all of us on.
Okay.
From there up to space age.
Okay.
And it is for me a blessing.
Okay.
Because all my teaching work outside Ghana added to my understanding of life and my knowledge. So I learned from the living experience in those different environments. And so when I spend time in Ghana, it is an accumulation of experience from other
places.
Yeah.
Then from Papua New Guinea, you came back to Ghana.
Oh yes, indeed.
Back to your university.
Back to the University
I think
of
you
Ghana.
love University of Ghana.
Absolutely, it's a fantastic establishment, and I love it.
Yes, one of
very
the
much.
prestigious universities in
yes.
Africa.
Absolutely.
And you rose through the rank
Absolutely.
to become the Vice Chancellor at the age of 46.
That's right.
Prof,
Yep.
46 years.
Yep.
Then,
Yep. A small boy at the time.
a small boy.
Yeah.
Ah, incredible. Congratulations.
But it was again an amazing experience.
Okay.
Because Vice Chancellor, I mean, how was I prepared for that?
Yes.
No training, no experience, running anything on that scale.
But were you appointed or it was by election?
Appointed.
Okay.
Well, appointed after council have done their work and selected.
Okay.
It's a whole process for
It's a
selection.
process. Okay.
Yes. Yes. I wasn't even in the country. I was in Papua New Guinea. I wasn't even here. I didn't apply for the job.
You didn't?
No. They did a headhunt.
Okay.
Had a search party which selected people and so on. So that's how my name came up.
Were there competitors?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh, very big ones.
Wow.
Established names. I'm not going to mention them now.
No, don't.
Because in a sense, after my appointment, that was one of my problems.
Okay.
That I was seen by some as a new person, a young person, coming to run all of us. I was seen also at the time as a friend of the PNDC government.
Oh, okay.
So there were those who were, shall we say, not crazy about my appointment.
Okay.
So apart from having to settle down and run a university, I had to manage these difficult circumstances as well. And that combination was not easy.
Yeah, well, that brings me back to the next question actually. That how were you able to really handle both internal issues and then with pressures? Because I believe when you were Vice Chancellor, Ghana was under military regime.
Absolutely.
So how were you able to blend the two and the money to, go two terms, if I'm not mistaken?
Absolutely.
Yes.
No, it's an amazing experience again that requires a long discussion.
Okay.
There was a military government.
Okay.
But one in which I had very good friends. It was still a military government, with its own agenda and so on. The university at the time had a posture of opposition to government. And therefore there was, before I arrived...
The university, a posture against military government or just any government?
Well, against that government.
That government?
At the time.
Okay.
But let me add one more very interesting bit.
Okay.
That this government-university confrontation had got to a point before my arrival where the workers took over the university and occupied it for, I think, a year before my arrival.
Okay.
The story was recovered, I think, a year before my arrival, so my predecessor, who was acting, acted over a recovered university for 1 year before I was appointed.
All right.
So when I came back, the faculty was dispersed. Some of them had gone to Nigeria, abroad, and so on, including myself. The structures had been damaged and not maintained. So there was a real physical collapse in the university.
Okay.
At the same time, funding was limited. We received government subventions monthly in arrears. And often you spend the money, you go ask for it to give it to you, you get only half of it. Very difficult. So those were the broad background elements of the period. At the same time, there were serious student protests against everything, the government mainly.
Okay.
So we in the university administration were caught between the students and government.
The government, yeah.
So a very important part of our function was to keep the campus going.
Yes.
By allowing the students to express their views and carry on and so on without crossing the line.
That was a difficult thing to do.
Very difficult.
So how did you manage that?
I don't know.
Definitely there should be
but there were a number of
structure
things
in place.
No, looking back, there were a number of things we did right.
Okay.
One of them was to take on the university community, students, staff, workers, lecturers, everybody.
Okay.
As a community.
That's right.
But to understand the community so thoroughly and to get their trust so completely that when you are talking to anybody outside, government outside, you are speaking for the community.
Yes.
On the one hand.
Okay.
At the same time, you have to make the community aware of the reality that with a military government in place, we can't have it all our way.
Exactly.
So I was caught in the middle, and therefore, to some extent, offended both sides.
Exactly.
But over a period, I think it became clear to everybody that that posture was the right one. So the students were able to operate on campus. They demonstrated. They did everything they had to do. Government had its way.
Yeah. Somehow.
Yes. And the two kept going. But of course, there were collapses. There was a famous collapse which I'm sure you know about.
Prof, tell us.
A number of things built up.
Okay.
But at one stage, the students were publicly attacking the Minister of Education and therefore the government.
Yes.
Publicly.
Yes.
And government didn't like that at all. So, and they were expecting us to control the students. Now, it wasn't easy.
It wasn't. That was 1992 or before?
No, before that.
Before.
It must have been 80 something.
Oh, okay.
89, thereabouts.
Okay.
That was a famous period. I can't get the date right.
Okay.
So, although we're talking to government to understand the need to get the balance right, government announced on radio the university should close down at 7 p.m. on that day.
Goodness.
We were with them in the morning. They never told us that. Council chair, myself, and others, we came back to campus to hear the news of the closure.
You should close, and it was by
decree. By radio.
Decree.
And we had to empty the campus by the end of the day.
And where were the students going to have transportation back home?
Nobody cared. And the police had lined up behind the police station across the road from us. We didn't know that till after the announcement, with the steel helmets and other business. So, I don't know, at around, of course, when I came back and heard this, I called a meeting of the executive committee immediately.
Okay.
And asked everybody, let's not debate the rights or wrongs.
Yes.
Let's get the students off campus. How we do it, how we don't do it, let's do it.
Okay.
Everybody, go to any hall around and help out.
Mobilize, yeah.
First thing we did. By the time we finished the meeting, the police armored cars were on campus.
No, but I thought universities are kind of, enclaves in themselves.
That's right.
Not
in those days.
Not in those days, under military rule.
Without discussion, without getting, normally, before you come on campus, you must get permission of the vice chancellor.
Exactly.
Or let's inform them.
Yes.
Nothing. They drove onto campus, and I can see the picture in my head now, literally. And they stopped just outside Volta Hall.
Wow.
And so Professor Bennett, who was then my deputy, my pro-vice chancellor.
Pro-vice.
And I literally went there physically, very politely, and stood at that circle with the commanders and the armored cars.
Prof, what were some of the transformational changes that you brought to the university?
Well, essentially, my first task, and when I say my first, I mean the team's first task, was to re-establish academic work on a normal basis after the previous years of closure and disturbance. But among the significant things that we did, I would mention the introduction of a more rational system of promotions.
Okay.
Because for a long time there have been very few promotions at the university when I took over.
Okay.
But also the requirements for promotion were unclear.
Okay.
So one of the things I introduced was a new arrangement which ensured that everybody who was a lecturer had the chance to rise to the lecturer level, senior lecturer.
Okay.
Mainly through the teaching ability and some research.
Okay.
But to go beyond that, he required research and publications in the old style.
Okay.
But the third point was to introduce a point beyond which you will not go.
Okay.
If you don't get promotion. So that if you rose to become a senior lecturer, you didn't have 3 years within which to qualify as an associate professor. Because there were people who'd been there as lecturers for 10, 15 years.
So many years.
And so on. So the idea was to encourage people to work for promotion.
Okay. Did it work?
Well, it began just before I left. And the third year where the guillotine was coming came after I had left.
Wow.
So I cannot guarantee what happened.
Okay.
But that was a very important introduction, and it made people begin to really work for promotion.
Okay.
That's one thing.
Okay.
The other thing that we did was to get the labs re-equipped.
The university laboratories. Okay.
Because for quite a while, they've been let to run down, lack of funding and so on. So I sought help from the donor community generally.
Okay.
And got help from the Japanese government to help us to re-equip some of the key labs, I think biochemistry, chemistry and so on.
Okay.
Those were the kinds of things that we did.
So with the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done if you were given the chance again today?
Well, today is a whole different story.
Okay.
Because today the numbers have gone up so seriously.
Okay.
The funding situation has changed so dramatically. That quite frankly, I'm not sure what I would have done if I was there today. Because mine at the time was to revive and strengthen a 5,000 person university.
Now they are almost 40,000.
They are almost 40,000. So it's a different scale.
Okay.
Clearly, what's required now goes beyond what we have to deal with.
Yeah.
The fundraising, the external support, the commercialization of units. It's a whole different world.
Yes.
And I look at my colleague vice chancellors now and say, better you than me.
You know, they have the collegiate system operating.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yes.
During your days when students went on strike and the government was intervening, then we got to know of a crop of people called Aki police. Was it that you also had the security there to unleash mayhem on students?
Absolutely.
I mean, what brought about the name?
Right. It's a very interesting situation.
Yes.
It reflects a number of things. One was my relation with students.
Okay.
My personal links with students as a group. The Aki police thing came up, interestingly, not in terms of oppression.
Okay.
Not at all. The security guards, I think, during my tenure, were given uniforms and organized into a clearly decidable body.
Okay.
That was all.
Oh, so it's nothing to do with, having security pools and cells on campus?
No, they were not for my security, if you see what I mean.
Okay, yes, I do.
Absolutely. It was just like the asphalt road that was built.
Yes.
was named after me by the students again. So they put my name on everything.
Okay.
But it was more, you can check with the students, it's a matter of fondness, not of oppression, because the security guards never, during my 7 years, attacked students.
Okay.
Not a single time.
Wow.
Never.
No. Okay. Thank you. So we move on. Life after the University of Ghana. You moved to the Association of African Universities in 1993 as the Director of Research. And you stayed on and progressed to become the substantive Secretary General.
That's right.
Where I think you were at the helm of affairs for about 5 years.
5 years, yes.
Can you just give us a brief about your experiences at the Association of African Universities?
Yes. Well, that's an interesting question. Because I joined the Association of African Universities in 1993, I think.
Yes.
At that time, the association had been through a very bad patch. Because, as you recall, all universities across the continent had gone through a very bad patch in the late 1980s. So the Association of Universities was just recovering. And we had a very good leader, Professor Donald Ekong.
Yes. Of blessed memory.
Of blessed memory.
Yes.
Who very energetically began to revive the association.
Okay.
And because I was at the time Vice Chancellor of the University of Ghana, I was his nearest university.
Okay.
So I helped him a lot in the work he was doing.
Okay.
So when I retired from the University of Ghana, it was a natural for him to invite me to come and work with him more directly in the association. So my move there was based upon that earlier relationship. Yes. But the specific task which I was given was the task of helping with the research work by the association, but also the management training aspects.
Training of vice chancellors?
Vice chancellors and senior management.
Senior management of universities?
Of universities,
okay.
Yes. On the research side, we introduced what was called the study program on higher education research.
Okay.
Because prior to that, there was hardly any higher education research as such done by African scholars. It was done by others for us.
Okay.
So we began a program which flourished for many years.
Okay.
I also took over a preceding program which was called the Senior University Management something or other,
SUMA, okay.
Which was started before my time.
All right.
The idea then was to bring together African vice chancellors for a workshop of training.
Okay.
It was run from Canada.
The SUMA workshop?
Yes.
Okay.
But when I took we then changed it over and localized it.
Okay.
So it was run from Accra.
Oh, so it became an African
very much so
run program. Okay.
And went beyond that. And we changed it to become a leadership and development program.
LEDEV.
Yes.
Okay.
And later
so LEDEV started from your era?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
I introduced LEDEV.
Wow, it's been running for quite a while.
And then MADEV, which didn't quite start in my time,
yeah.
we introduced it.
Yes.
I don't know what happened to that. Is it running?
MADEV is running.
There you go.
Yes.
I'm very pleased to hear that because we realized from the work of SUMA that we required to separate out the leadership dimension from the management dimension, and I'm glad that it's working as you propose.
So they are all working.
That was my trajectory until I became the Secretary General. It was a whole different ball game.
As Secretary General, what were some of the challenges that you faced at the AAU?
A number of very important issues about the nature of the association itself.
Okay.
And the place of higher education in the African scenario. One of the long-term battles we fought was against the policy then prevailing of encouraging our governments to devote funding to basic education development.
Okay.
In effect, at the cost of higher education. Now we, across the continent, fought very hard against that. Because while we completely agree with the notion of improving basic education, it seemed to us completely irresponsible to play down the value of higher education. So by the time I became Secretary General of the AAU, the battle had gone beyond the continent. We were now pressing the donors to accept the notion that you cannot run a serious modern economy without a vibrant higher education sector. Luckily for us, at the same time, the Blair Commission, Tony Blair's commission, looking at education and African development generally.
Yes.
Also very importantly, for the first time, the AU, African Union, also took up the task. So the AU's role was to provide the arguments and the research basis for entrenching higher education as part of the thinking of the AU and the other donors generally on this matter. So that was a very important structural change that we introduced at that time.
I recall there was the Abete conversation that AAU fronted to make a case for higher education in Africa. Was it successful?
Very successful. The effect was the transformation of donor support. Because until then, for example, DIPI, the British aid support outfit, did not support higher education or AAU. But after that, after the Abete and the Blair Commission report, DFID began to support higher education, certainly with the AAU. So it was very effective at that time.
I think the AAU had about 3.5 million pounds.
Absolutely.
Yes,
from nothing.
Mobilization of regional capacity initiative.
Absolutely. You were right at it. You were there at the time, of course.
Prof, I believe I was there.
You were very much part of that. That was a very significant transformation of the aid. Of course, the impact went beyond DFID. Other donors as well. The higher education partnership in the US and so on also supported. So that was a very important change in the atmosphere.
Currently, the World Bank is actually creating centers of excellence across Africa.
The World Bank? Well, that's interesting.
They are in their third phase.
Very interesting.
They did one for
because
West
we had to
Central
fight
Africa.
the World Bank very hard to bend their view towards this. But I'm glad it's going on now.
Yeah, it's going on.
Excellent.
And in fact, the African Union is also creating centers of excellence.
There you go. Fantastic.
So thank you for the good work done.
Thank you very much.
I know it was Herculean then, but now it has really gained ground.
I'm very pleased to hear that.
The African governments are also picking up.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Prof, now you left AAU, but you didn't retire. I'm told professors don't retire.
No. Believe it, that's absolutely true.
Yes. So after AAU, where have you been?
Oh my goodness. I've been mainly working in the civic atmosphere. Working with civil society organizations, working for government as well. Pro bono.
Pro bono.
Pro bono, yes. On committees and boards. And pre-research and all manner of things. Keep me busy.
You were enrolled at the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences in 1992.
That's right.
Even when you were at the University of Ghana.
That's right.
And then you rose to become the president.
For one term.
For one term. 2016, 2017.
No, 15, 16.
15, 16.
Yes.
So what were some of the transformations that had taken place since you got there at the GAAS?
Well, the Ghana Academy of Arts and Science is a very important institution in terms of its bringing together some of the best minds that Ghana has, without doubt.
Before you go on, when you say best mind, does it mean that it is a kind of a club that not everybody can enroll?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a very limited access body. And fellows are selected on the basis of their academic achievements. By a very rigorous
selection process.
Very rigorous indeed. So to get into the academy, you must have established a credible track record of high caliber academics who were globally recognized.
Globally recognized, that's the key word.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So the best minds of the country are in the academy.
Okay.
Without doubt.
Do you have people from outside Ghana?
As honorary members.
As honorary members.
Yes.
Okay.
Only Ghanaians to be regular members.
Okay.
Outsiders can be honorary members.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. But to the question of what has been done, many things. The most significant thing during my tenure was the introduction of a committee to review our work.
The work of the academy?
Of the academy as a whole and bring it up to date.
Okay.
At the end of the work of the committee, we decided to strengthen the chapters of the academy and to link them more directly with government agencies, the private sector and so on, so that it created a much better rooting of the academy in social practice, from which our research will emerge. That is still ongoing. It is not over yet.
Right. I know the GAES, or the academy, has a new secretariat.
Yes.
Was it initiated during your time?
No.
Okay.
It was started before my time, but it was completed during my tenure.
Wow. Congratulations then.
Thank you very much.
I guess you pushed it.
Well, I pushed it, but it was begun before my time.
Okay.
So we're simply continuing work that others have started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prof, you are a very well awarded person. You were awarded the Companion of the Order of the Volta in 2007. When your name was mentioned, how did you feel?
Well, I felt humbled.
Humbled?
Yes, because that award was a national recognition.
Yes.
Of contributions to the national interest through my work on higher education.
Okay.
And as a scholar, you become professor, you become vice chancellor, but to get recognition beyond the academic sphere, I thought was significant, and I really felt grateful for that. Thank you for that.
What about the Black Star Excellence Award?
Exactly. These were other awards by other agencies who were looking at what I was contributing to civil society work in other areas. Again, this was a very significant recognition because you don't think of those things, you simply do what you are doing.
Yes.
And for others
to recognize. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
But the highest to me is when you were selected to become a member of the Council of State of the Republic of Ghana.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Prof, what is it? What is the Council of State all about?
I suppose it is in the nature of the second chamber under the 1992 Constitution.
Ghana's Constitution?
Yes.
Okay.
Because there was a debate about having a second chamber like the House of Lords.
Yes.
But the Constitutional Review Committee chose not to have that.
Okay.
But instead have a council of selected senior citizens.
Right.
Who would advise the president and the executive in private.
Okay.
About national affairs generally. And the body is made up of people who are there ex officio.
Okay.
Called the office. But also others who are selected by the president and the cabinet.
Okay. And
I was lucky to be one of those who were selected by the president and the cabinet.
Prof, you were not lucky. You had it on merit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So what were some of the things that during your era you managed to achieve?
Well, that's interesting because quite frankly, I think the Council of State is underutilized.
Underutilized?
Yes.
Okay.
My experience was that we were not able to tackle some of the critical questions which would have helped government in making decisions. And it was partly the Council's own slowness in taking up issues, but also the lack of a tradition of consulting the elders on matters that are critical.
Oh, you mean maybe the three arms of government were not consulting the council?
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly. And in a way, it is not their fault because there was no tradition of that in the
constitution,
in the constitutional arrangement prior to that.
Okay.
And so my frustration is that there was a lot more we could have done for government if we'd been more involved. It's not a difficult question government to face.
Was there therefore no trust in the council?
Oh no, on the contrary, there was a lot of trust. But it was taken for granted.
Okay.
that the council will say a few things, confirm appointments, and that was it. It was a failure to recognize what the potential
of
the council.
Okay. Okay. Prof, you have chaired several boards, several councils, several committees. What comes to mind is that you are currently the chair of the review committee that is looking at the collegiate system of governance at the University of Ghana.
Right.
You are the chair of the steering committee on the project called Tackling Illicit Financial Outflows from Ghana. You are the chair of the steering committee of the Ghana Oil and Gas for Inclusive Growth. You are the chair of the Council of Trustees Institute for Democratic Governance in Ghana. You are a member of the Governing Council and Faculty Board of the Ghana Insurance College. You are a member of the Board of Governors of Sajefo Kwame Nkrumah African Genius Awards, etc., etc., etc. Prof, are these not taking your social life away?
On the contrary, these keep me engaged in the things that I think are important.
Okay.
Clearly, it's very time consuming. But each of those bodies you mentioned is involved in important work, which I think is a privilege to be involved in doing. Now, of course, I'm not doing it alone. I'm part of a group, but at least I'm engaged and involved in doing all this. And the key thing for me is that by involvement in all these bodies, I'm kept very much in touch with the next generation, the one below that, and the current affairs of the country. So it's been, for me, very productive engagement since my retirement from official duties.
Okay, and these are basically pro bono?
All pro bono.
Oh my goodness. Prof, I know for one to become a professor, you need to publish. You have published widely on various things, various subjects. We cannot even classify them. But I know you have published on legal and constitutional issues. You've published on governance issues. You've published on political economy, the economic development, higher education, etc., etc. So what else have you not published on?
Two things on that. First of all, publication is part of the work of an academic. So that in the normal course of your work, if you are doing it properly, you will have research work which you publish. That's the first part. You get promoted, recognized as an academic based on your publications. But beyond that, I saw publication as a way of one improving myself by learning about things beyond my technical field. But also using the skills I've acquired as a university person to interpret our reality in the areas in which I'm studying for the wider public. So it wasn't simply publishing for promotion, but publishing to spread understanding
and to make an impact.
And to motivate and to stimulate others on key issues. So, for example, although I'm a trained lawyer, and my legal work is what got me the promotions in the first place, much of my publications have been away from legal work.
It's true.
Because real life goes beyond the law.
It's true.
And so I've seen my publication record not so much as academic achievements, but I assess them by the extent to which they contribute to shaping debates, creating platforms for discussion of key issues. That's how I see publication.
And your grandchildren are waiting for your first fable. So, Professor as a novelist,
it is cooking up in my head.
Okay, then we look forward to reading from you at your 80th birthday.
Absolutely.
Prof, they say that a good conversation never ends.
True.
So this is just the beginning of the beginning.
Thank you very much.
So we want to wrap up. But in doing so, we just want you to just say a little bit about your social life. So tell us about you as a family man.
As a family man, I have had the good fortune of having an excellent wife. We've been married for 51 years now. 51 years, yes, 2 children and 3 grandchildren.
Prof, come again.
Yep.
Only 2 children.
2 children and
Only
3 grandchildren.
3 grandchildren.
That's it.
It doesn't make you an African.
No, exactly. If you were to know what my father did, and my father, his father before him, you see that the point you are making is absolutely correct.
Okay.
I'm an exception in the family tradition.
To the family.
1 wife,
okay.
2 children, 3 grandchildren, no more.
Wow.
That's it.
Congrats. I think you are mentoring somebody. Who are you mentoring?
Well, in a way, that's the whole point of my work,
okay,
which I mentioned earlier. I see my social work at the moment exactly as mentoring.
Okay.
Because right from the days at Legon in the 1970s, there's come up a whole generation of serious intellectual activists.
Right.
Who are now matured into 60-year-olds, who are still leading, and all the work, all the list you mentioned of my chairmanship and so on, is working with them.
Okay.
So the mentoring continues to this day. Not directly, specifically, but in the constant interaction and engagement on these social activities.
Are we looking forward to an Aklakpa ideology?
My goodness. That is the kind of thing which I leave to others.
Okay.
I'll carry what I'm doing and let others interpret it as a
maybe we should. So what about the other social life, your political activism, kind of? What line do you do?
Well, essentially, I suppose you will consider my political position as a progressive. I won't go beyond that.
Okay.
Because I believe absolutely firmly that African economies are not under our control.
Right.
They ought to be. I believe that the political and economic arrangements we've got now, despite all our pronouncements about independence and so on, our arrangements are constantly tying us even more tightly under the control of foreign capital.
That's right.
And so it seems to me that it is a lifelong task.
It is.
To make sure that we do not accept and take for granted the current dispensation.
Right.
So I see my role as helping others to constantly call into question the current arrangements of our political economy. Because if we don't question the present, we are accepting subjugation forever, and that is unacceptable. That's my broad starting point.
Prof, congratulations again.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much.
At 79 plus, you are mentally active and physically strong. What is the secret?
Well, it is something I think I will say loud.
Okay.
It is so common for our young professionals after graduating to stop exercise. I mean physical exercise. My one message: don't stop exercising. Whatever you do, do some walking, some tennis, some soccer, whatever, some physical exercise. Everybody should be doing that all the time. Men, and especially our women.
Especially our women. So our women, an advice from Professor Sawyer: don't stop exercising.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Prof, your very final words.
My final word is back to higher education.
Okay.
And that is that we are currently facing problems in the higher education system. Because I don't think we have quite, as a continent, thought through fully the role of higher education in Africa at this time.
Okay.
So my final word to all my colleagues who are active in the field now is to step back a bit and let's assess more closely what higher education ought to be doing at this time in the process of helping Africa redefine its future and achieve it.
Prof, You have really set a research agenda now that we are going to carry forward. Hello viewers, we have been talking to Professor Akila Kosoya, who is our maiden guest on the AAU Impact Stories celebrating academic mentors. Thank you very much, Prof. And viewers, tune in again next week for yet another interesting episode. Thank you very much.
Introduce this section, I've asked my colleague. He's an extraordinary professor here at the Nordic Africa Institute. And when we had an advisory meeting about this roundtable, he insisted there has to be student perspectives, and I'll leave to him to explain why that is so important.
Thanks so much, Kaisa, and welcome everyone. It's a little bit absurd almost that the oldest participant, meaning me, I am as old as I look, opens now the round with the contributions by the three youngest participants in that chat. But I think age does not really matter when it comes to tackling social challenges and problems. While I think I'm a dinosaur, I hope that my mindset is a current one. And while I cannot preempt what the three students have to say, and I'm very keen to listen, because especially my age group should learn not to talk as much as we do, but to listen more, and then think twice before we talk, I would like to share a few concerns which basically contribute in a nutshell to the debate. And they engage on two levels with knowledge production and knowledge transmission. And I think the one is class and the other one is the meaning of knowledge. Now, what do I mean? And I have just 3.5 minutes left. With class, I mean there are social in the 60s on the nature or the double nature of education. Class matters. Now, in our current societies, institutionalized access to higher education and the transmission of knowledge can be used as an instrument to reduce class. But if we now are forced by circumstances to relocate education into the home, then it's not part of a solution, but exacerbates the problem. The home situation of students reflects a class position, and the environment conducive to learning is the one of a middle and upper class. So students who are now relegated back to a home environment are facing the disadvantages which life on campus to a certain extent can reduce, not eliminate, but reduce. So I think we need to be aware of that. And the second aspect is the one of the so-called hidden curriculum. Pedagogy matters. And I believe that a transfer of humanist education, which I hope is the ultimate goal of education, being emancipatory and humanist, requires empathy and compassion, and that requires personal human interaction. While we can get along with a nice debate as of today, I strongly feel it cannot totally replace human interaction, which means eye-to-eye interaction, which means empathy, which means emotions, which means feelings as part of a learning process and the transmission of knowledge. Knowledge is not a neutral affair. It means empowerment also in the sense of human empowerment. And it's very interesting that just now Silicon Valley jumps on the bandwagon and sees an opportunity to transfer higher education into one which is entirely based on the kind of communication we are doing now. And an interesting comment in the New York Times magazine said, I quote, will big tech's entry into education reduce our humanity? And I think it's a challenge we are confronted with for the time in the post-corona exceptional circumstances. And I think we should be aware that we don't enter traps. Yes, we can exploit opportunities, which by force of circumstances we are confronted with, but we should not throw out the baby with the bathwater. I would like to end with a quote from an article, and I will share with all of you the links to 2 articles which I feel quite relevant in that context. It says, this article, technology doesn't fix social problems. People do. But deployed unreflectively, technology can reify or even enhance social differences and inequalities, locking into algorithms very human decisions that are biased as the social systems they automate. And I think that's the risk and the danger I see. But that's the view of a dinosaur. Now it's up to us to listen to the young ones.
Thank you for that introduction, Henning, and I'll call first on Claudia Esidentu. She's a final year student at private Ashesi University in Ghana, and I believe she does not have a camera, but we can hear from her. You have 5 minutes. We'll let you know when 2 minutes are left.
All right, thank you, Kaiser. So this is Claudia. She introduced me, and as she said before, I'm to give a personal reflection on how the coronavirus has affected me and what my school has done so far to, deal with this new pandemic that has affected the whole world. I, for one, have been stuck in my room for months since schools closed down. Personally, I'm not much of an outing type, but what is new is the feeling of restlessness that comes with knowing that you can't just go anywhere when you need to or when you want to due to the risk involved. I was set to graduate on May 30th before COVID-19. As an upcoming graduate, I had lots of plans to carry out, and it's sad seeing all these plans come to a halt. However, as a human, we are created and built to adapt to different situations, and I believe I've been coping pretty well and hoping the world will soon overcome this pandemic. For my university, Ashesi University, the school has done pretty well in successfully adapting its curriculum to incorporate new changes as a result of the COVID-19. The school has successfully moved all of its lectures online, making use of the Zoom app and Canvas for its teaching and learning. Also, the school has made arrangements with telecommunication companies to supply monthly internet bundle to students. Such a move has made it possible for all groups of students to join lectures on Zoom and emails, Canvas, everywhere that we need to interact with our lecturers and our mates. For final year students like me, our thesis and our project is still in the pipeline. The school has created a system where we can access the resource database from our homes. There are good initiatives. All these initiatives by my school has been very helpful to with the whole Ashesi student body, but not everyone has been able to, use the internet. The online learning couldn't cater for all the different group of Ashesi students. There are students who live in communities where there is no internet access. These students have no option than to wait for the pandemic to be over so they can go back to the classroom. For some of us, with respect to the online learning, it's been hard to pay attention in class. The absence of the environment to, keep that focus is making it hard to, pay attention and follow some of the lectures that happen online. Various discussions with some of my mates also revealed that it's hard for them to also follow during online lectures. This is all new, and this is all new to us, and it's taking some time for some of us to completely adjust when we have only known a physical classroom all our lives. However, there are also some students who have fully embraced the change. Some students also have to balance house chores with schoolwork, and it hasn't been too easy for them. They complain a lot on the WhatsApp groups and in email how they need to bath babies, do this and that, and the school we are still required to submit our assignments, our projects.
2 minutes remaining. 2 minutes.
All right, thank you, Mila. Also, most of the final year students at Ashesi have been real sad with respect to how events have turned out. We were supposed to graduate May 30th, as I said. The sadness of leaving school, readers of final school days with our friends, our lecturers, moments like our last days moment. We do keep up via social media and through phone calls. However, it isn't the same. This was supposed to be our graduation month, and now we don't even know what the future holds. Same with national service. It's like you want to make plans and think about the future, but how can we make such plans when you are so uncertain of the future? This is my view and my take on the whole coronavirus pandemic and how it has affected me, measures my school has put in place, and how my mates and I have been affected by it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia, and we feel with you. These are very uncertain times. Thank you for sharing your experience. We stay in Ghana, and I asked Titilope Ayayi, who is a PhD candidate at Public University of Ghana, and also the founder of the online resource doing a PhD in Africa, to tell us about life as a graduate student at this point.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, but we cannot see
awesome.
you. Let's see.
I just put my video back on.
Yeah. If possible.
Can you see me now?
To see you.
Okay. Should I go ahead?
Can we see you? Yeah.
My video is on.
Okay, sorry. It's just me who had a setting that
okay.
I couldn't see you. There you are. Go ahead. Please, you have 5
awesome.
minutes.
Okay, thank you. So, as has been said, I'm in the final year of my PhD, and I also coordinate an online-based community of PhD scholars across Africa, which is called Doing a PhD in Africa, which I think is a very good empirical illustration of how technology can be leveraged to support either PhD or other learning, and I can expand on that later since I don't have much time. So my university is also closed. It's been closed since March, and because I'm in my final year, I don't have issues with online learning. Although I see that we're starting to do Vivas online. I just started seeing the announcements last week. I haven't attended one yet, so I don't know how that's going to go. I also don't know what it means for graduation, but I'm monitoring the process. But I do know that there are issues with access to online learning for undergraduate students and for PhD students in their first year. At my university, the first year is when you do coursework. So the crisis hit in the middle of the second semester for most of these students, and I know that they've had challenges. And one of the comments that came from the PhD group that I was talking about is from Omolara in Nigeria, and she says, I'm reading, transition to e-learning is not working for some students. Some universities either don't have the right infrastructure or the lecturers are not well prepared to run online classes, and this echoes some of the things that were said earlier. The second issue area for me has been my field work. I was due to go to Lagos in March to do the final leg of data collection, which obviously is no longer possible. And this is an issue also for other colleagues that I've spoken to. And what I've done, how I've tried to manage this, is substituting the in-person for digital interviews. And that raises 3 issues. First is whether this is acceptable methodologically, and it's something that I still need to find out from my department. I'm in international relations. The second issue has to do with connectivity. I've had connectivity on my end and connectivity on the end of the participants that I'm talking to. I have had interviews where Skype wouldn't work. At that point, Zoom wasn't such a big, it wasn't such a popular platform. So I've had interviews where Skype was working so badly that I had to resort to WhatsApp. and I couldn't do a call because the other person's connectivity was bad. And so what we ended up doing was using voice notes, and you can imagine how stressful that was, having to wait for the person to answer and then listen before you can ask another question. The interview took 3 hours. It should have taken 45 minutes. And the other issue also is, by doing it this way, you're indirectly forcing your participants to bear the costs of your research, and that has all kinds of ethical implications. And then the last point I had was about productivity. So I was supposed to go to Lagos to present a paper at a workshop there, which has been postponed. We don't know yet whether it's going to end up being a virtual conversation, but the purpose of my going there was to present something that I'm working on, which I was planning to get published later this year. Obviously, since that can't happen at the moment, then it has implications for when and whether, in fact, I can publish.
2 minutes remaining.
Okay, thank you. For when and whether I can publish it. So it has implications for my writing process. So I think since I have 2 minutes, I'll just go back to where I started and talk about PhD in Africa very quickly. So some of the things that we've done, like I mentioned, we're online based. So for example, we have had surveys, for instance, on the challenges facing PhD students in Africa, and the results of that survey informed most of the content that you'll see on our website, and I can share that in the link in the chat. The other thing that we've done more recently is that we've organized bi-monthly, what we call them peer support forums, where if you're a PhD student at any African institution, you can come and raise questions or concerns about any aspects of your PhD program, whether it's to do with the technical, writing, or research process, or whether it's to do with relations with your supervisors, anything that has a bearing on your PhD experience. So I will stop there and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Titelope, and so generous of you to also share your network with us and views from all your followers on doing a PhD in Africa. And please do share a link in the chat so that others who are interested can find your resource. Last in this part, we have Marcia Manhik. She's a PhD candidate at Uppsala University and Eduardo Mondlane University in Mozambique. So please, Marcia, let's hear from you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. As Kaira
Sound
said,
is very low.
I'm
Can you
PhD
try to turn up your volume?
Okay. Hi again. I say that I'm PhD student. I started this year. I'm enrolled in the course that Prof. Stan is giving now about democracy and public engagement in anthropology. Related to, from my experience, it has been, it is an unexpected situation, because I was preparing myself to go to Sweden to study there, and I saw myself, I saw that we had to change our plans, so we have to start from Mozambique. I said, okay, this is fine, at least I'm going to start. This is good for me because I'm not losing time, and I have opportunity to learn, to do the course even at home. But I have to say that sometimes I find some kind of limitations related to my connection. I remember once that I lost the lesson, the presentation of Professor Stein, and it is something complicated, because sometimes you are following the lesson and suddenly the connection go down, so you have to get in, try to connect again. But as we record our lessons I have opportunity to go back to the platform and try to listen to it again, and that is good for me. So we have some difficulties related to the cost of internet, but I think that we are also reinventing ourselves, looking for ways to make it possible to do the course. In general, just to show some kind of experience from other colleagues, what is happening at Eduardo Mondlane University is that the teachers now are giving lessons. It has been a complex process because we have some structural issues to take into account. Some structural issues related to poverty, but also related to some kind of limitations on the use of digital instruments. Like we have some teachers that were not or are not prepared to teach by this kind of platform. So they are now looking for ways to learn to do it. Okay, thank you. They are learning to do that. So it's time that is going. But in general, we are using email, WhatsApp groups to have lessons. So people are trying to do their best. We can see from our colleagues, from our friends, they are looking for ways to have lessons, but we can't I think that we have also to consider that there are some students that have limitations to have lessons in this kind of platforms, because some of them do come to university, but they don't have computer, or if they have, they still have some difficulties to use it. So it's something that we also we are facing here. But just to finish, I have to say that people are trying to do their best to have lessons from WhatsApp and from email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia, for sharing your experiences so far. Sad that you cannot be with us here in Sweden at the moment, but hopefully we'll get to see you sometime soon. I wanted us to launch into discussion. As we prepare to do so, I'd like to first call on Grace Idahosa, who's a visiting scholar here at NINE at this point. If you want to share your experiences too, I think are quite interesting with how COVID has affected you and your research that is also on higher education. So maybe you want to say one or two words. After Grace comes in, Desire had a question for Sten that was never addressed. It was about pedagogy being during lockdown. How can it be improved? You wanted to expand on that, Sten. And after that, I'm going to open the floor. So please write here. I see names being added to the group chat. So we'll take it from there. First Grace and then Sten.
Okay, thank you, Kaiser. I'm not sure where to start, but I think the first thing to say is that at the moment I am stuck in terms of not being able to go back home. So there are no flights and anything. And for some reason, I didn't prepare my mind for that. I just thought when 15th Friday, I'm out of here, I can go back and get back into my work. Or at least settle down before getting back, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So now I am trying to rearrange my life in terms of this week, for instance, I decided, okay, I need to start going to the office because I have deadlines that I have to meet, and sometimes you're not able to extend these deadlines even if the situations are difficult. So I am working on a report now that I have to send in tomorrow. Sorry, today is Thursday, yeah, on 15th, Friday. And that can't be pushed. Yeah, apart from that, I think it's another thing that's been challenging is partly surprising for me is the mental health effects of this. It's not something that you really think about because as academics, we are naturally prone to isolation and to being in our own silos and all those things. So you think, oh, it's fine. Anyways, it's like every other day for me. But there is something about that freedom being taken away from you, where you're not the one making the decision to stay at home or lock yourself for like 1 or 2 weeks in some without talking to people or meeting people face to face. And that's been difficult. I mean, I've always said, I don't like people anyways, so I don't need to see people. And then in the last 4 weeks, I've realized that I actually do cherish the face-to-face meetings in the office and everything. In relation to my work, that's been a little bit, I think, more challenging because so it spills over from the mental and emotional issues to being able to work and being able to do things at the same capacity or level that you were doing them before the pandemic started, and that's been difficult. I don't think I've been able to provide a solution for myself. Now I'm just trying different things. And I think the last thing I want to talk about is the actual work that I do. So my research focuses on agency in relation to transforming higher education. And in the last few weeks, I've had to think about the impact of the move to e-learning and the impact of digitization on say transformation, or even just the higher education context in general. And just on a side note, my research is mainly focused on South African higher education. And some of the things I've been thinking about are kind of the challenges that higher education institutions in South Africa face, because there's an intersection of race and class in terms of who has access at the university level, at the level of the academic, at the level of the student also, of who has access to be able to participate in these online learning in online learning processes. So at the level of the institution, for instance, in South Africa, we have the historically white universities and the historically black universities. And the historically white universities are more equipped to be able to actually make this shift easily, whereas the historically black universities find it more difficult because in the first place, they do not have the necessary infrastructure, some of them set up to be able to make that move, that smooth transition. So for instance, some lecturers are still giving their notes, paper course outlines, or they just send it via email. So they don't use like platforms like Blackboard or Moodle and all these things. Now they're having to, like some people mentioned in the presentations, now they're having to kind of amp up these platforms to enable students to learn. But aside that, then you deal with the issue of access to data and access to the necessary to internet to be able to even for students, even academics, to access this platform. And at the level of the academics, which is like my primary interest, so I try to understand academic staff agency to contribute to transformation. So even whether they are staff or they occupy, whether they academics or they occupy leadership positions within the university. And
Thank you, Grace. I think it's your research really is interesting because it looks at the nuts and bolts of transformation in the university, and as you say, you might have to shift a little bit with the Corona crisis coming to London. Your luck, literally, you've been very much affected personally. But I think also for the academics and the staff that you study, it's interesting to see how COVID affects their agency. I will hand over to Sten. There was a question for you, and you have also told us you have something you would like to bring up, so you can have some space to do both.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the question. And it was about what can be done of pedagogic development during the Corona. And I think that I echo what other people have said, that of course this is how to make do in a complicated situation. I'm not saying that this is a true alternative. It's just thinking what can be done and how can we make use of this historical situation. One thing that I find important is that you can share PDF files and readings quite easily, even though people are not you have a problem with a connection. You can send text and tell people, well, you have to read the text in advance. And then, of course, if you have power cut, eventually, hopefully, power will come back and you will be able to be able to read it. So I think that kind of the balance between, on one hand, a kind of direct teaching in and talking, and also having this kind of preparatory aspect of the work. Maybe and also an experience that we learned long before COVID is also not to use PowerPoints so much in this kind of medium, because PowerPoint eats a lot of capacity of internet. So I think this is not at all a comment to what happened today. I think it was great presentations, but instead of PowerPoint, you can share the PowerPoint in advance. You can send it and so on, and try to be shorter, have more of interaction in your talking. So I'm just thinking these are the things I think we can learn from this very unpleasant experience. Then a final point, and I think many people have brought it up. It's the WhatsApp groups. I tend to say that an armed group that would like to affirm itself in the Malian turmoil, the first thing they do is to get a Twitter account or a WhatsApp account. So in a very complicated circumstances, we see that social media are used in all these kind of groups. And I think that most of us, we have our smartphones, plenty of silly pictures and things going on, what's going on. I mean, you're connected in various ways. But if you create using this kind of WhatsApp groups, we have a group in Messenger that we use. When we started, we just said, don't share, this kind of funny things, just share professional things. Having a kind of situation whereby you are not going to get this kind of conspiracy theories or whatever people are sharing, but get things focused on the topic. And I think that is one way of being a bit disciplined from what you are sharing. Because if you get 20 photos of somebody who is dealing with corona or are questioning so and so, well, then after a while you will have people leaving the group. And all this comes to my comment. And I think this is maybe where the Association of African University together with us could make a difference. And that is to push for open access. And not just open access in the sense of opening up a little or doing a kind of marketing campaign, but really push for open access. So that when these things are available, when the articles are available, that we can use them. And I think that is one of the kind of main things. Not a miracle, not a panacea at all, but at least something that could be a very concrete step. And to push the big technological corporations of Silicon Valley, as Henning said. So I think there is something there. My last point about in the response or connection to what Grace said a few minutes ago. I fully sense your concern about this loneliness and so on. And what we have done with my 2 PhD students from Mozambique in Uppsala, living in small studios, is that given that we don't have a complete confinement in Sweden, we have started walk and talk supervision. So we are walking outdoors. So we are walking to Gamla Uppsala, we are walking in the forest, or we are walking and as a way to have a kind of meaningful social interaction. Because I think we have good reasons to be very worried what this happens to us psychologically and socially, and even more so if you are not at home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sten. Is that close to your department, or if Grace or anyone else wanted to join? Is it like one-on-one, or it's a group?
Absolutely. We can walk to Gamla Uppsala together. Gracias.
That's lovely. Grace, did you hear that? I wanted to hand over to Mireille. She had a comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sten, and everyone for those presentations. It's not really a comment, but just to ask a question. Yes, about electricity shortage. I would like to know, maybe be more to know, know if it's a particular problem in Cameroon or in Central Africa, or there are other states in Africa that face the same problem, because I think without electricity access, we can't have access to internet. So it's just a question I'm addressing to university staff, academics of other places in Africa, just to know, to have a view, compare. Is it how does it work in South Africa or West Africa? Because here in Central Africa, in Cameroon in particular, it's a great problem. Almost all the regions are affected about that, and we have been really affected during this particular pandemic context. So that's all what I want to know.
Yes, so let's have a few voices on that. Maybe Nodomo, would you like to say something about power issues, maybe across the continent, and then if anyone else has witnessed things they want to say.
Okay, thank you. I think it's an African problem. Many countries face that problem. And I think one of the things that we keep reflecting on is how we can take advantage of alternative sources of power. So we need, I think, as a continent, to begin to operationalize some of the talk that we've been making about Africa has so much sun, but how are we using that as an alternative source of power? And also, of course, securing the data centers where the learning management systems sit is also very important. And maybe also thinking with the innovation.
Okay, so let's take this higher first, and then Claudia. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just to comment on that, in the South African context, we've been having a lot of load shedding lately. But since the lockdown, there's not been any load shedding. So power is not a problem at the moment.
Thank you. Then it's Claudia.
Okay, thank you, Kaiser. So my question is to Sten with respect to working outdoors with the students and going to the forest here and there. Do you practice social distance if you have to pay attention to keeping walking around and everything helps the person or helps you people?
That's a direct question for Sten.
Should I reply?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, it's just that we felt that it's important that we meet anyway. We can have supervision by Zoom, and then we decided why not have walk and talk supervision in the sense that we are walking around. And because in Sweden it's okay to be outdoors, but you have to keep 2 meters from each other. So we have you can have an ongoing conversation about PhD issues. Of course, you're not taking notes like that, but it's a combination of talking about the PhD topic or the thesis or the organization of the work, but of course also try to get some social contact in this complicated situation. This is of course due to the fact that we have in Sweden, it has been completely fine to be outdoors and walk with people. So it's not a very big issue. It was just a very clear way to make sure that people are not falling into depression or all these kind of things, because this is a tough situation for all of us. Thank you.
This crisis seems to be a lot about balancing interests. I mean, it's the health interest versus the livelihood interest, and it's also the COVID risks versus the mental health risks of loneliness. So it's really a balance, and since Sweden still allows us to be out and about, then we're taking, I think that's an excellent way of doing it, Stian. Thank you for sharing. Titi Lope has said she wants to come in, and then it's Henning on the list.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay, so I just wanted, it's not about power. I just wanted to flag something that came up on Twitter. I've been tweeting certain parts of this conversation. And somebody just commented that universities in Nigeria, some of them apparently are charging students extra for online classes, and the amounts are as high as $500. I just wanted to put that on the table.
Well, yeah, so that's another aspect. I heard from other parts of the world, students are demanding their fees back because online classes they feel is on a different level and should be charged as an university education in person than when it goes offline. Thank you for sharing that, Titi Lopez. So Henning is next.
It relates to that because there is a material aspect to online teaching. And it's not only access to power, it's access to internet and the costs of having access to internet, depending on where you are. And in some rural areas, I know it from South Africa and from Namibia, students who have been relocated back home to their families, they simply have no access to internet because there's no Wi-Fi, or they have to purchase it through their private cell phones. And then it's at exorbitant costs because telecommunication in some of the African countries is charging an arms and a leg. And then also you have the limitations to circulate PDFs for download. And again, it brings back the social background and the material background of the students at the receiving end. We need to be constantly aware that when we discuss these technologies, we are facing social economic realities which provide opportunities for some and deny opportunities to others.
Thank you, Henning, for reminding us of that. I think Claudia was sharing that as well, that her classmates in Ghana, some of them are not able, because of costs or because of the area that your family house is in, you're not able to be part. I think it's very important. The Alliance for Affordable Internet usually puts out a yearly report, and African countries have the most expensive access to the internet in the world. Yes.
And may I just add, because that showed the importance of listening to those on the quote-unquote receiving end, because all three of them, in one way or another, highlighted those constraints, which we sometimes tend to lose sight of. And it's so important to consider that perspective and bring it in. I'm so grateful that we had these three voices.
No, it was much thanks to you. So thank you for hosting them. Marcia is next.
Yes, just to add the comment related to the costs. One of the issues that is being discussed in Mozambique is related to the fees, because we have private universities and they want to charge for those marks that that students are not having lessons. So more than discussing what are going to be done during this time, last month the universities and the students were discussing about the fees, if they have to pay or not. and the students and their fathers doesn't want to pay because the students are not having lessons at school. So this is one of the issues that we are dealing with now, just to share. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia, for sharing issues with fees also in Mozambique. Titilope also adds in the chat to keep an eye on, and of course the general context is that higher education on the continent, the costs for it is more and more pushed to the individual, to the families. It's no more generally, even for the public universities, it's no more public good. It's now something you cash and carry like many other social services. I mean, a few countries are exempt, like Senegal, who is providing free higher education. At this point, we need to wrap up. We have 4 more minutes. I'm looking at Lisa. I don't know if she can see. I'm looking at her, but I would like for her to say a few words to close up. Lisa and I, as she mentioned, we have a project on higher education focusing on political greatly helped us.
Thank you very much, Kaisa. Well, for me, this was most of all learning, and I really enjoyed to be in touch, to be in connection with students and teachers in Africa. I think that issues related to the teaching infrastructure are such practical and able to invest in these areas. As I briefly explained about our research project, which is about political science, the interesting debates on asymmetric relations with the production of knowledge, extremely challenging and difficult questions. But in order to tackle those questions also, we need to solve practical issues, how to interact, how to disseminate knowledge, how to provide the access to our discussions to students. And I think that with relatively modest contributions and investments, internationally speaking, we could really make a difference. So thank you very much for all of you who contributed to this discussion. Thank you to Kaisa. And
to remind you that we have promised to send you certain documents. Henning, maybe if you send the papers that you wanted to share to me, then I can put all of it in one email. I'll share the link to the AAU TV on social media, so you can see yourselves hopefully in the near future. I'll share a link to the policy notes that just came out of our project. I'll share the links to Titilope's initiative, the PhD in Africa. And if anyone else has links they want shared with the group, you can send them to me by close of day, and I'll share it with the rest. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you to our partner, the AAU. It has been a pleasure convening with all of you, and I'm looking forward to future collaborations that might come out of this conversation today. So have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
Same to you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Are you an institution or individual? Do you intend to organize a memorable event to be archived for future reference? Then look no further than AAU Studios, because it's your best bet with our spacious studio and state-of-the-art media equipment such as 4K Panasonic video cameras, KinoFlow lights, assorted microphones, live streaming equipment, among others. You are sure to get the best of productions. Visit us at Trinity Avenue, East Legon, adjacent the National Accreditation Board, or contact the AAU studios via the following email addresses: info@aau.org, AAUTV@aau.org, or ransford@aau.org. Alternatively, you can call us on +233 244 736280.
Over-the-counter drugs, OTC. At the mention of over-the-counter drugs, our minds are sent wondering as to whether they are safe for consumption or not. But we are here to change and renew mindsets about over-the-counter drugs. Let's take a listen.
Over-the-counter drugs are drugs that a person can walk into a pharmacy and buy without a prescription. Yes, so the pharmacist will not necessarily ask for a prescription if the person is to walk in and say he wants this particular drug. Yes.
A more restricted class of OTC drugs also exists. These products, while considered OTC, are kept behind the pharmacy counter and are dispensed by a pharmacist because they are subject to abuse and may require proper identification and a signature.
Some examples of over-the-counter drugs include paracetamol. We have ibuprofen, diclofenac, and sometimes they come in combinations. For instance, F-Pack, yes, Gibidol. Those are all over-the-counter medications. Yes.
Over-the-counter drugs are not illegal. Over-the-counter drugs are drugs that are legal and are authorized to be sold in Ghana, across the world. Actually, they are found in pharmacies. They are found in licensed chemical seller shops.
Some people abuse OTC drugs to self-medicate for mental illnesses like anxiety and depression. Abusing these medications can also make people euphoric and hallucinate. Any use outside of what's recommended is considered an abuse. Moving on to OTC monographs, they define the safety, effectiveness, acceptable ingredients, doses, formulations, and labeling of OTC active ingredients. An OTC drug monograph is established for each class of products.
So for the over-the-counter drugs, even though they are safe, they are classically safe and that's why they are sold over-the-counter, they can still have problems. Yes, there are still some problems that you can face, especially for the painkiller ones, like the ones we call the NSAIDs. That's the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So they are usually painkillers, and when they are taken correctly, they are not problematic. But when they are taking too much, they can give you what we call stomach ulcer. They can erode the stomach wall, yes, and then can cause ulcer. So too much of that can be problematic. So if you are taking it, it's not necessarily something you take for long. It's just for the pain, just for the symptoms. So if you are having pain, you have a headache, you take 1, 2, it's enough. Maybe 3 days, 5 days, it's okay. But if you keep on coming to buy the F-Pack, coming to buy the Gibidol, coming to buy the paracetamol can also cause liver damage. Yes, overuse of paracetamol can cause liver damage. So every drug, no matter how safe, can have some adverse effects if you take it too much. So ideally, there should be some regulation to the way you take it. So if you walk into a pharmacy and the pharmacist has realized that you keep on buying this particular drug, they can try and stop you or give you some advice. Maybe change it to this one. This is safer for you. So if you have active ulcer, for instance, you have to go to the pharmacy and tell them that I have ulcer, and then they have specific painkillers that they can give you that will not give you problems.
Finally, all patients should consult with their doctor, pharmacist, or other healthcare providers if they have additional questions concerning OTC drug use. Pregnant women should speak with their doctors before taking any medication, vitamin, or herbal supplement, even if it's an OTC drug. Thanks for staying tuned. This has been Health Africa on AAU TV. I am Bridget Amadente.
Hey, so this is Dishant from Unica University Common Application. I recommend you to watch AAU television.
AAU TV is the place to be for every person in higher education in Africa. Better be there or be nowhere.
Continuez de regarder la télé et surtout sur le AAU.
Keep watching it and it will change the way you interact with higher education on the continent. AAU, great job.
I want to tell you that AAU television is fantastic. It's educative, it's informative, and it is a must for anybody